Hi, welcome back to the Briley Fitness Educational Video Series. My name's Gordon Briley and I'm a longtime personal trainer and nutritionist. Today's video is about a really important topic that affects a lot of us, and that's low back pain. So this is something often, it's not all the time, but often we deal with this and it's really not necessary because there's some pretty easy fixes. So what I want to do is just go over some of the basics. We're not going to get too in depth because I want to try to keep this simple, but give you some fixes that can help you possibly deal with some of this back pain and give you some answers to why it might actually be there. And one of the reasons that we deal with this so much is because as Americans, we're seated all the time. So whether we're driving to work and then we're at work and we're sitting at a desk. All the time we're sitting on our asses, and that's become a really big problem for us. So what happens is our glutes become inhibited. Essentially, they start to atrophy. And when that happens, our shape of our lumbopelvic region changes from what it should be, from its anatomical design. And anytime that happens, we have shifts. It can start to cause pain or problems or movement issues. So what I want to do is show you how this actually happens. So when we're seated, as you can see here, the drawing is of the hips, the legs, and these are actually just the muscles. So this is going to be the quadricep, and this is going to be the hamstring. That one's kind of hard to see, but these are really the muscles that are being affected by weak glutes. So what happens is when we're sitting, our pelvis often drops forward. We have an excessive spinal arch, which is a big part of the problem. This is causing the pain because it's compressing the disc on the back side. And that pelvis being shifted forward causes this quadricep to actually shorten and the hamstring to lengthen. And we're seated so often, we're creatures of habit. We become part of this position that we sit in. We actually maintain this long after we're out of our seat. So what I did is I drew some examples of what we want to see and often what we do see. So this one here is a neutral pelvis. This is actually what we're shooting for. It has a nice natural low back arch. So this is what it should look like. Your pelvis is neutral, and that's how it's anatomically designed. This is the way it should look. Your quadriceps and your hamstrings are the length that they should be, and they keep that pelvis in line. So what happens when we're seated and we get short quads, long hammies, is now that pelvis shifts forward. And when that happens, again, this shortens, this lengthens, and we get the excessive arch. So this hip is no longer neutral where it belongs, it's shifted forward. And that is what's really causing a lot of this back pain. So less commonly is a posterior pelvic tilt, and when you see these people, they have no butt. It's straight down. They're actually rotated to the posterior side, to the rear side, and their spine is very, very flat. And once again, that's out of the natural anatomical position, and that can cause pain as well. So anything that's outside of this neutral, nice standard arch is likely to cause pain, and they really just have to do with the length of these muscles and how toned they are. And when I talk about tone, it's really tonicity. It's how much do these muscles contract without any thought, without any effort. How much do they contract to keep your pelvis in the right position? And that's what we need to do because our glutes, because of our habits, are inhibited, and it changes the tonicity, how toned these muscles are, and it allows it to stay in this position, causing pain all the time. So what we really need to do is just fix your glutes. The glutes are kind of the central location, and they play a really important role both above and below. So often if you have knee pain, calf pain, or if you have thoracic pain, sometimes it can just have to do with their glutes. As you can see, these glutes are kind of what holds you together in the center portion because there is no muscle that crosses the sacrum. So these have a lot of really important roles, and there's the glute medius on the lateral side as well that's really important. But we're going to focus mostly on the glute max. This is the easiest one to train, and it's the easiest one to describe. So what we need to do is create tonicity. We need to keep these glutes contracting at all times so they can actually help to hold this pelvis in its neutral position. So how do we go about that? It's actually not that difficult. We need to do some of the basic exercises that we already do or create good habits, but what we need to do is make sure that we're doing them correctly. So I listed some of them. We have a deadlift, squats, glute bridges, band work, and one of my personal favorites is lunges. I also put here having a standing desk. This can actually create some issues in and of itself, because often what people will do if they stand for too long, they'll lean to one side and rest on the tendon of that one side, and that in itself will create some issues. So if you have a standing desk, I would make sure that you get one that will both go up and down, so you can sit and then you can stand. You can sit. Just don't get so tired that you start to use poor techniques, poor biomechanics, just to try to achieve something that you think is healthy. So when I talk about the deadlift, squats, glute bridges, and lunges, the really important part of this is to achieve that neutral posture that I talked about here. Because this without actually squeezing and contracting those glutes, you won't achieve this neutral posture. You can actually go through the motions and still never really get that pelvis to rotate back to its neutral position. Because if you don't really squeeze those butt cheeks, it's going to stay here. So when we do a deadlift, we need to make sure that we stand all the way up and bring our hips through to that neutral location. Only then are you really contracting the glutes, and that's when they're going to respond. So we need to make sure when we squat, we squeeze our butt cheeks at the top, get neutral. You don't want to overarch because that's going to cause compression in that spine again and cause pain, and that's just going to add to the problem. So your glute bridges, when you're down and you come up, you need to really, really contract those glutes. And then my favorite is lunges, and you got to make sure you do these right. Keep a vertical shin, that back knee drops straight down to the ground. And what you actually can do at this point, and this is why I love them so much, is because they will actually, if you're doing them right, stretch that quadricep and strengthen the hamstrings and the glutes at the same time. So it's kind of the most bang for your buck when it comes to exercises that most people know how to do. Don't let that knee flex forward when you go into that lunge. Keep that shin really, really vertical, and then you'll hit the glutes much better in that position. And one of the last things I want to talk about, this is related to the glutes, is often pain is caused by the atrophied muscles themselves. So what I mean by this is sometimes, so this here is the trochanter. It's the lateral side of the femur, and this is where some muscles attach. And when your muscles actually start to atrophy, and you're going to see this more in females and older folks, they'll actually atrophy and they'll start to contract and pull back. And when it pulls back, it actually can start to pull some of the tendons or muscles right off of the bone. And that creates a lot of pain in and of itself, just by the muscles becoming so weak and pulling back that causes pain. So some of this pain in the lumbopelvic region is caused simply by having weak glutes. So we need to attack that, but attack it in a way that's actually going to produce some results and alleviate that pain, because getting this pelvis back in that neutral position and not compressing these discs front or back, and then when you get these glutes strengthened, you're going to see probably a lot of improvements both above and below. You may see some alleviation of other pains or aches in other joints because now that midsection of your body is actually doing its job. And you can actually start to strengthen the core in this new position, and that transverse abdominis is really going to start to do its job. So I don't want to get too much into that part of it. We can get a lot more technical if you guys have questions. But as far as the basics, just get your ass working. Get your pelvis in place. Try not to be seated. Try to get up, stand up, walk around, and squeeze your butt. Squeeze it. I did put on here band work, and that's something that you can do sitting at your desk. You put a band around your knees and pull them all the way up just above your knees or just below, and you actually keep your feet flat and just press your knees out against the resistance of that band. So that's something that you can do while you're actually at work and keep your glutes firing, and then stand up and do some get up and walk around. Don't be sitting forever. So just be aware that being seated is really the biggest part of having weak or atrophied glutes, which is causing this back pain. So hopefully this is you guys have a better understanding of why this happens and how to attack it. Of course, you guys can ask questions if you want to have a little more detail. We can go over that, but for now, I'm going to sign off, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.